If I didn't press record, maybe I'd never press record. I think I've been procrastinating on releasing a podcast for far too long. I threatened it to myself, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. And I started out with Anchor, and Anchor's a great app. You know, if you haven't seen it, you lift the phone to your ear, you start talking. So I was trying to fit in like podcasts after the gym and podcasts when walking home from work. And it was fun. It's a useful app and maybe it's changed now because you can record on desktop as well. It was fun to get into the habit of feeling more comfortable with speaking just openly about thoughts. And it's good because the barrier to entry is so low. Like there's no excuse. You could just literally lift up your phone. But I was finding it really awkward. And then I realised that I was doing it for the sake of doing it. So actually I wanted a space for myself. And after, even though it's taken a few years to get here, I realised that actually what I was most comfortable with is just speaking through my own thoughts in the comfort of an environment on my own. Because how often do you spend on your own these days? I guess in the lockdown, in the pandemic that we're in right now, a lot of people are spending more time on their own. But prior to this, and I think this is one of the things that the pandemic's brought about, is a realisation that maybe we're all living a bit too fast and a bit too much in each other's pockets. So I think one benefit of the pandemic for me has been able to take some time out to focus on me and me things. And I think that's the case for a lot of people, reconnected with the things that I'm interested in, reconnecting just with my thoughts. Sometimes things move so fast that you don't even get a chance to, you have a thought and then the thought's gone. You're in the shower, you have a thought, you think you're going to write it down, and it goes forever. You have a great dream, and then the dream's gone because your alarm's off, and then you're off to work. That's a crazy way to live. So, and everyone has all of these ambitions and their ideas. Just think about that. You're walking, through a city, you're walking past someone, they've got ambitions and ideas in their pockets and things that they've never been able to truly spend time on. Perhaps they were making excuses or lying to themselves or in fear of doing things. And then all of a sudden we have a pandemic, we're at home and we're tested by our own procrastination. It's kind of staring us right in the face, and we've got to make a decision. Do we make any further excuses, or do we just press record? And so that's why I'm here. Because it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I've had thoughts I've wanted to share. I've written, I'm more of a writer by comfort more than a speaker. But I feel like there's a place, and I feel like, here's what I'm thinking. So with writing, you get to take kind of all of the words that are in your brain and try and you kind of predict your own response. You articulate your response, and it's real and it's meaningful and it can be touching. And likewise, you can do the same with your body. So with exercise, you've got all the toxins in your body and all the stress and all the anger, and you can work that out of your pores. You can exercise to get that energy out of your system. But then when it comes with, I'm more introverted than extroverted. And when it comes to thoughts and when it comes to speaking, there are things that you want to say. And then if you keep them in, where do they go? They're wasted. And so I was thinking that maybe just as a form of therapy, as a form of meditation more than anything, podcasting, speaking, finding a channel, a medium to get these words, which I guess are somewhere in my head, outside of my brain, ready to come out of my mouth. Well, now they're out. So I press record. Here I am. This is the advertising hour. Soku with Wind. So I'm probably going to play a few different, I don't know, as you'll find out as I talk more, you'll figure out that I'm interested in hip hop. It's a massive part of my life. And so I'm probably going to take some time, listen to some new music while I compose my thoughts for the podcast ahead. Soku with Wind. I've been listening to a lot more lo-fi hip hop and just beats during the pandemic as I'm working. I typically have my work laptop one side, a laptop with something like chill hop on in the background, and that's what's motivating me to get through the day. It's just a nice background to have. My research, and shout out to Chill Hop. I think they're doing amazing things for artists, for producers, for beat makers. If you go to YouTube and type in kind of lo-fi music, or there are, I think, things like binaural beats and stuff like that. There's I think Chilled Cow maybe is another. And then funnily enough, and I was going to talk about this later, but seeing as I'm on the topic, Will Smith and Will Smith's not reinvention, just addition, I guess. He's, over this last maybe 2 years, has built up a massive YouTube following, and out of the blue, just at the beginning of quarantine, he released a playlist, and I think it's called, if you type it, if you just go to Will Smith's YouTube channel and type in quarantine beats to chill to, or just find that on his YouTube channel, there's like I think it's an hour and a half playlist of lo-fi beats. It's amazing. I kind of got that bookmarked at the moment. That's something I keep coming back to alongside Chill Hop, so go check that out too. And I guess that's something I'm finding fascinating, is that the way in which certain, I guess, celebrities, people in powerful positions, which I'm sure we'll get onto because it's a hot topic at the moment, but particularly with Will Smith, and the other person I've noticed is Mike Tyson with Hotboxing, his podcast. I guess people that have had successful careers and disciplines previously now are maybe into their late 40s or 50s and are venturing out into other areas of social media, of marketing themselves, remarketing themselves, new businesses. Mike Tyson has a cannabis farm, is a massive weed advocate, now has a massively popular podcast, although maybe making a boxing return as well. And then Will Smith, who's, if you check out his YouTube channel, he's got loads of entertainment, which you would expect from Will Smith, but lots of entertaining content. Recently jumped on the Joyner Lucas remix for Will, which is amazing. The video for that's fun. I think those two stand out to me as people that I love it when people get into their either 50s, 60s or beyond, maybe just start reinventing themselves and their careers. And particularly, I think this is maybe what stands out as I'm thinking about it, reinvent themselves into careers, into modern platforms. That's fascinating to me as well. I think it's just motivating to know that you never get too old to reinvent yourself, and you never get too old to test new mediums. And really, that is an excuse. And that's quite motivating for me. I haven't got to worry about that for a little while. I'm quite comfortable with a lot of the new platforms, but I'm getting there. I'm in my 30s, and so even things like even TikTok, to an extent, is not 100% comfortable territory for me. And so I find it motivating when I stumble across people that are doing things that are authentic, without, I guess, compromising their persona, their character at a later age. So, as I said, this is the advertising hour. I'm probably going to jump all over the place. This is going to be fairly unedited. I didn't really want to edit myself on this podcast. My intent, I guess, to speak on my intent for the podcast for a moment, my intent isn't to edit, isn't to kind of produce something that's a particularly well-produced or overproduced. I want the audio quality to be good. I think it's important I'm a massive podcast listener. I think it's really important for podcast quality. I think it's really important to have good podcast quality. As I said, I tried Anchor before, and just listening to myself back on Anchor made it a really difficult experience because it was wind and homeless people shouting at me and all this kind of stuff, and it wasn't particularly an enjoyable experience. It's more enjoyable. I'm just sat here in front of my mic, might take a swig of tea in a minute, and I feel like the audio quality is going to be better. I'm more relaxed. But I think there's a lot to be said about exploring unedited thoughts and sharing unedited thoughts. And I've been thinking a lot about this during these last few months, and with myself as well. I've taken over hosting duties on another podcast. That's the Internet Marketing Podcast, hosted by Site Visibility, the company that I work for. And I've been paying a lot of attention to people that are on conference calls, people that are attending new types of meetings, and everyone rushes, and maybe this is just my character, but I feel like everyone rushes through things, and everyone has conversations and forgets about the goal of the conversation and doesn't take time to reflect on it. There's this kind of a need to make immediate decisions, and it all leads to terrible decisions. And sometimes, again, there's a lot to be said for letting people say, or just letting people go, and not in the meditation way. That sounded too meditation way. More like, yeah, that's the So let people deliberate on their ums and ers. I'm not so fond of like and but I know that I'm going to say them. But there are those little transitional words, and I think in conversations, and particularly with conversations around feedback, or if you're active listening, you've got to have the discipline to not interrupt the ums, the ers, the the likes, because those are where all the secrets are found. Those are people's real intent, people's hidden agendas, people's empathy, people's fears. Their real emotions are hidden in those transitional words. And if you don't let them say them, and another one, actually, the biggest one of all, is silence. So I'm giving myself way more permission over time to enjoy the silence. And we've got a lot of silence at the moment. Have you noticed silence? I've noticed silence more. I've noticed silence so much that I wake up in the mornings and I can just hear the birds. I can hear things that are irritating me that never irritated me before. The other day, I was laying there. This was maybe 2 weeks ago, and I woke up and I heard like one bird, and it was squawking. I think it was a seagull, aloud. And then this other bird joined in. I think it was like, shut up, shut up. And then this other bird came in and was like, yeah, I've already told him to shut up. And then there was like I don't know what you call a gaggle of birds. I don't think that's right. I don't know if there's one name for, like, I guess it was like a gang of birds. And they were all ganging up on this seagull, and they were just shouting it, go away, shut up, we've told you to be quiet in the mornings. You're waking them up. And then they were gone. But I was counting them in my head with my eyes closed as I was laying in bed. There was like 16 different types of bird that I heard. That's different. That's something new for me to listen to. So I've been enjoying the silence. I didn't really enjoy the birds. But it was fascinating to hear them out and about. I think they're doing new things. So yeah, silence. Back to silence. So I think you've got to be. I mean, I've. This is something that I've practiced for a long time, about being comfortable giving yourself permission to be comfortable with your own silence. That's one thing. That's hugely important. You give yourself permission to find your train of thought. Give yourself permission to connect with your thoughts more clearly, and don't feel pressured to rush a response to someone, to rush a decision, to rush a conversation. I think that's so important. And I think it gives you time to just clearly think about your thoughts. And I think thoughts are there to be built. So the first thought that comes to your mind it doesn't always have to be the one that's shared. You can let it build. You can let it build in the silence, and sometimes that can be therapeutic too. And then I think people feel a pressure to respond to silence as well. That's a natural instinct for everyone. It's people feel uncomfortable in silence together, and so someone always feels the need to fill the void. And I don't really. I think I think it's necessary to get comfortable in other people's silence too, and just give other people a chance to collate their thoughts and just to be comfortable in the silence together. So if there's anything that comes out of the pandemic, I hope that comes out for a lot of individuals and businesses and stuff like that, where meetings are often dominated by the loudest voice in the room, and that's been the case for a very long time. I guess I'm just encouraging a more relaxed, a more authentic way to respond in meetings, in more corporate environments. Maybe that's my thought. So I had a good sleep, and that's another reason why I decided to press record today. I've been having, my sleep has not been good, and then some days it's been better, and maybe this is age. I don't know what it is about an age thing, but it's like someone just presses a button on your mind and then 7 a.m. you're up and you're about. I could never understand why old people would get up at like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. and be cooking eggs, but now I understand. I don't even like eggs really that much, but I'm up. And I'm waking up earlier, and with this will be debated after this podcast, but with clear thoughts. It's like I was awake, and then I was awake again, and then I don't know what happened in between. The sleep wasn't even there. I just woke up, and it was like the Lord had jammed an EpiPen straight into my quad, and he said, "Go see the day, Scott." So here I am. I'm going to see the day. I've been having a lot of crazy dreams though, and I remember, man, I've had two dreams that stand out to me, and one dream last week was, if you know of DDP, he's a yoga instructor. Well, him and two of his, I'm going to say redneck friends. I think I'm allowed to use that phrase because it was really. Are you allowed to use a phrase like that if it's in your dream? Because was it really me that said it? Anyway, it was redneck. It was two of his, because that's what I told myself in my dream. I was like, oh, DDP and these fucking rednecks, they're annoying me. So it was DDP, former wrestler, now yoga instructor, motivational speaker, author. Him and two of his rednecks friends, they were transferring me from a motivational facility where I was giving motivational talks. And then during this motivational speech, I spotted a it was a rowing machine in the corner of the room that no one was using. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not fit at the moment. I need a rowing machine. And there was one there just sitting in the corner of the room of this motivational facility after I'd given a talk. And I wanted it. And so I asked the people that owned the building, can I have that rowing machine? And they said yes. And then I was somewhere in America, and I had to cross country with this rowing machine. And I don't know why I did it, but I purchased the rowing machine, maybe even stolen it from this motivational facility. I got DDP and his goons to help me out, transfer it across country. And then somewhere across the journey, I was just about to take it home, and I got bitten by a rat on the side of my leg. And that's when I woke up. It hurt. It hurt in my dream. So that was a bad ending, but I'm still here. So, yeah, lockdown dreams. I've got some stuff bookmarked, but apparently there's a reason that we're all dreaming more. Maybe I'll share more dreams if I can remember them. As I said at the beginning, I think it's right now I'm remembering my dreams. I never even remembered dreams before. What was life before the pandemic? I can't even remember. So I mentioned that I'm already a podcast listener. I am. I've been listening to podcasts for about 10 years. My very first podcast that I was introduced to was Ice-T, the Final Level podcast. A shout out to Ice-T. Where he was covering at that time his role on, I always get this wrong, SVU, Special Victims Unit. Yeah, the American TV show Special Victims Unit. He was with Mick Benzo, one of his friends, kind of a professional in the music business and entertainment business, and they talked about Ice-T, sports, film. They had guests on occasionally, and really their guests then introduced me to other people that had podcasts, and it snowballed from there. And so over 10 years, I've been listening to podcasts, and I've seen the evolution of podcasting. A lot of people have told me, which I still don't believe, that they feel I can be articulate. Again, it's hard to believe in this podcast, probably. And I never really believed it. And then it's really just about having that extra confidence. If people are telling you things that you have a certain skill, maybe there's something that you need to explore there. And again, maybe this is age, maybe it's experience, and maybe it's just being more comfortable in my own skin. But maybe maybe when there's something to that, and people have been saying it for a long time, it's something that I felt I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't explore it more. So that's another reason why I thought I'd jump on a podcast and start speaking more regularly. And then I guess it's both good and bad timing. So the good timing for podcasting right now is it's booming. It's seen over the last 15, 20 years, maybe three separate booms, maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Actually, we're probably just on a cusp of a fourth boom right now, particularly given the Joe Rogan news and him joining Spotify for 100 million, which I'll probably go into later in the podcast. But so that's a good time to be involved. At the same time, I guess the downside is that, is there anything unique about a podcast? Everyone has a podcast. You can, like I told, you can set it up so you can grab Anchor, the app, you can put it to your ear, and anyone can launch a podcast. But as I was thinking about this, I realised that it's never the medium that makes something unique. It really isn't. It's the use of the medium when you're on the medium. So I guess when you're in the medium and what you're doing inside of the medium, the content, the substance, the delivery, whether it's the cadence, the jokes, the information, the humor, whatever your unique angle and perspective, that's the difference. And so when you use the excuse, which I probably have to myself, I definitely have, when you use the excuse that, maybe it's too late, that platform's already in use. So many people are on that platform. Everyone has a podcast. Everyone has a book. Everyone has a blog. That's an excuse. And you've got to find the right medium for you. And so that's ultimately what made me eventually, get over myself and decide, I'm going to hit record and just start. So that's one reason for podcasting. I've already said one is just to explore my own thoughts in an unedited fashion, because I think, as I put in this podcast description for any one of you that picks this up on a podcast app, the podcast is meant to be part therapy, part information, and I can't remember what the hell I put, maybe part meditation, something like that. But I do expect it to be therapeutic, to get this out of my body and into your ears, which actually sounds horrific. And then I kind of started breaking down for myself, what are some of the true reasons that I like podcasting, and maybe that I want to do it more myself. What does it allow me to do? What does it allow other people to do? And I was thinking, one thing that is fascinating is, maybe there's a thought here, but with TV shows and with comedy and with anything we watch on TV, it's all predetermined, it's all pre-produced. So apart from obviously live content, but things like TV shows from the 90s, 2000s, even now, we've got canned laughter, canned applause, sound effects, all the pre-production stuff. It's all designed to be perfect. And so we're constantly delivered this vision of perfection in everything that we watch and everything we do. Everything is polished. And I just think there's so much enjoyment. And maybe this is my fear of doing something that's actually just good and polished. And maybe I don't have the patience. But I also think there's a lot to be said for exploring the unpolished, to explore the process, to present and to promote things that are unfinished, unpolished, in progress, the work that goes into invention, creativity, art, thinking, marketing, advertising, I think there's a lot to be said. And actually, this was only a minor thought, but I am involved in the Internet Marketing Podcast. I've been involved in that in a long time. That has a certain level of editing and production. I've listened to a lot of other podcasts, and I've seen the amount of editing and production that goes into them. And I think there's a lot. This wasn't my main goal, but I think there's a lot in advertising still that goes unsaid, and there's a lot in advertising that's presented as polished when it's not. And there's so much that happens behind the scenes, and so much struggle and creativity that goes untold or unsaid. And I think there's a platform for that to be shared. And I hope to share a little bit of that on this podcast as well. So I'm not doing it for money. I don't really, there obviously is money to be made in podcasting. If you make it big, if you look for sponsors, if you're, I guess if your goal is to generate money, you can do it. And I do think that Joe Rogan's move to Spotify in this 100 million rumored deal, I think it's, what I've heard is it's more than that. That will open up a new wave of contracts, sponsorships, and new way of looking at podcasting, monetizing podcasting, and the commercial side of podcasting. So there is money in podcasting for sure. There's lots of money in podcasting if you make it big, which is at the moment, I guess, a select few. Obviously, a lot of that's through sponsorships, a lot of that's through ad revenue, some money made for affiliates, but that's not really my intent. And I say not really; it's not my intent at all. I'm going to turn up. It doesn't matter. I'm going to lose money for sure, because I will be investing in tools and equipment to make this better over time. And I have no real worries about that. It's never something I've worried about. Again, this is another thing I think a lot of people worry about, particularly in marketing, is maybe not even worry about, but maybe don't think about enough from my perspective. What can be better than investing your own money in your own equipment in yourself? That's value that you're guaranteed to receive a return on. So whether you're a financial mind or a creative mind, one thing is for certain. If you invest money in yourself, you're guaranteed a return. That's for sure. And so I've invested my own money in myself over the years, whether it's through courses, equipment, whatever it is. And I've never worried about making that money back. I always just think that's just an evolution of a person. If you make money back over time, great. If you don't, you'll be a better person for it anyway. Do I do it for am I doing this? Am I here for any authority or gravitas or thought leadership? That's something I thought a lot about too. Do I want to be known? I guess is the question I ask myself. Not really. And that is a bit more not really than not at all. So I think it's nice. I think I do enjoy making the part of this that I want to be known, because I want to be connected to people that I want to talk to and that I'm curious about. So I know I need a platform to do that. And I know that podcasting is a great platform to, I guess, play into people's narcissistical. Yeah, I'm going to go for that. Narcissistical. Nah, that's wrong. To play into people's egos. And so part of doing this is to try and engage with people, to try and make some connections. So there is part of that I want to do that to become more well known in marketing, but it's less for the awareness of me and more because my goal is to build some stronger connections with interesting people who perhaps otherwise I may not have connected to. So I guess to broaden my horizons and contacts a little bit. So I'm definitely doing for that. Is it to do this for, and this is a question that I ask myself, for exploration, just a thought? And this really is what it comes down to for me. It's the exploration of thought and exploration of myself and my thinking. That's what I'm really here for. I often write to myself. I have written in the past other blogs. Some have been taken down. But I want to get more comfortable in myself at exploring my thoughts and sharing my thoughts and going through the process of doing that. And podcasting is a great way to do that, to fit it into my routine, particularly right now. I'm at home. I've got a little makeshift home kind of podcast set up here, studio type thing, and I've got the chance to do it, and I've got no excuses in front of me. So I really want to do this for exploration, and maybe as much as I want people to find value in this podcast, and I want people to find information and ideas and to spark creative interest and, again, connection to me and conversation as well, I'm really doing a lot of this selfishly for my own exploration of thought, so I can really challenge my own thinking. So that's why I'm really here. And I guess if there was a shorter summary of my podcast, it's, Scott Colner challenges his own thinking, which sounds like a terrible concept, sounds like a very egotistical concept, and it is, but that's what I'm here for. I've got to be honest with myself. So when it comes to marketing, I think marketing I've called this podcast the Advertising Hour. I'm sure that I'll go off on lots of different tangents. There are two, main, I guess, how would I describe them? There are two main primary interests in my life. Those are advertising and that's hip hop. Advertising and hip hop are two of my main interests. I've got many others. And I probably debate this on a day-by-day basis with myself. I'm for sure going to cover sports. I'm definitely going to cover technology, probably elements of management, leadership, corporate structure, that kind of stuff. And maybe typically, I guess, self-help or self-development is what I prefer to refer to that as. I'm definitely going to cover that. But primarily, I'm going to be going with the angle of encompassing my thoughts within the context of advertising, because, like I said, I think there's a gap to explore these things in the advertising industry. I'm probably going to use the phrasing advertising and marketing interchangeably, that they are different things. Maybe I'll cover that in a different episode. And I think advertising is a really good place to explore all of these thoughts, because advertising is encompassing of art. Advertising does encompass leadership. It does encompass communication. It does encompass introspection, creativity, extroversion, business, finance. Advertising for me is so diverse in the skill sets that are required to be a great advertiser and to be not even a great advertiser, to be a well-rounded advertiser, to be a curious advertiser. I think you have to be interested in all of those elements. And for me, advertising, though some of those things I just described are just life interests. So for me, advertising and life just merge into this one thing. And I want to explore all of that. So again, that's why I'm here. And, I think there are lots of puzzles to be solved in advertising still. And who doesn't want to solve puzzles? I want to solve puzzles. The only people that I can think that don't want to solve puzzles, complex situations, maybe bad cops and worse marketers. That's all I can think of. Bad cops and worse marketers, the two types of people that don't want to solve puzzles. That's my intro. That's going to be the podcast. How far through am I? I'm already 30 minutes through. So it is the advertising hour. I expect to go an hour, maybe every 2 weeks. Sometimes this is going to be me. I do, like I said, hope to get on the occasional guest. And for my second episode that's coming up, I have got the CEO of podcast.co talking about podcasting in lots more detail. I've already recorded that episode ahead of this one. That's going to be released in 2 weeks' time. I can't remember exactly what we talk about, because it was a conversation like this. It was fairly informal. I was fascinated by the guy. He's a really interesting person, and he knows so much about podcasting. Has built a great companies in podcast.co, matchmaker.fm, and I think radio.co. And there's so much more I want to learn about this space. I feel like I already know a lot, and yet I'm aware that there's so much that I don't know. And so to me, that's so exciting to be able to get into a space and to speak to people like that where they've been in this industry for 10 years. I'm reading books. I've taken over podcasts. I'm releasing this podcast. I listen to a lot of other podcasts, so it does take up a lot of my week. But there's just so much more to explore. So many emerging technologies, both software and hardware. Yeah, I'm fascinated. I'm really excited by the journey that podcasting is on. So look out for that episode. It's a really fun episode. And I know that we actually recorded two episodes, so the episodes are merging in my head. One of the episodes is going to be released over on the other podcast that I host, the Internet Marketing Podcast with Site Visibility, so go check that out, where we talk about common obstacles to podcasting and how to overcome them. So we break down, I guess, things that I've talked about at the beginning of this intro for myself, things like time, money, procrastination, not knowing what to talk about, and we break all of those down and explore how to overcome those. And I think in the podcast that we recorded for the advertising hour, we primarily covered lessons that we can take from the world's most successful podcasts. I think that's what the topic was. But I remember the conversations. I was with James for a couple of hours a couple of weeks back, so got to take all of his knowledge, and he's just a great guy to talk to and very open with his knowledge share. So thanks to James, and look out for that episode. Right. So I'm not going to have a set format for this podcast, but I'm going to break down, the things that I'm listening to. I'm a reader, so the things I read, the things that I'm watching, and then trends in marketing that I've been paying attention to, sometimes if they're prominent in my mind. One of the first things I'm going to talk about are the things that I'm watching and the lessons that I'm learning from them. And it feels like such a long time ago now, doesn't it? But, Tiger King, I'm going to touch on Tiger King because I was thinking about this the other day. I was on LinkedIn, and someone on LinkedIn had put a status on LinkedIn that was something along the lines of, how can you all support watching Tiger King when Joe Exotic at very least, even if he hasn't done all of this stuff to Carol the Bitch Baskin, he's at very least an animal abuser. And I did think about that, and it is weird. It is weird how desensitized we all are that Joe Exotic, who I guess is a animal abuser, arguably, maybe pretty bad boss, maybe like top 50 in the world at the time of the height of his success, fame. What else? I guess that I was thinking about him and being desensitized, and then I realized that I was thinking about veganism and the meat industry. And really, when I think about it, what is the difference? Is there a different? And maybe there is. Maybe this is wrong, but like I said, I'm going to explore my thinking. We've got Joe Exotic, who we're glorifying. He's turned into this cult hero. People asking for him to be released from prison. He's an animal abuser. We've all seen it or heard the stories. And then on the same time, there we are, we're eating meat. And I've been thinking about this a lot for myself. We know what happens in the meat industry. There are documentaries about the meat industry that we've either watched, and meat and dairy industry, the food industry in general. There are documentaries there. They're on Netflix as well. Some of us have chosen to watch them and done nothing. Some of them have chosen to watch them and have maybe done something. And some of us have just chosen not to watch them at all, but we've still watched Tiger King. What is the difference between Joe Exotic, just as an animal abuser, and us eating meat? We're eating meat in the knowledge of what's happening in the meat industry, and yet we're still choosing to ignore it. And we're not claiming those people. We're not claiming the meat industry people as heroes, despite what they do. Is it just because they just don't have a documentary? Is it just because they're not extroverted characters? Is there a difference? And the only difference, which I came to the conclusion of, is advertising, is marketing. The only difference is the way in which things are presented. You've got an animal abuser in Joe Exotic, and it's just presented in an interesting medium, in a format, in a way that satisfies, and really not only satisfies, but I I guess, matches our desensitized nature. And yet the meat industry just doesn't show all the behind the scenes stuff. It's nicely packaged. It's got the cute little name of the animal that we ate on the front and where it came from and what it was doing on the day that we killed it. And that's it. That's the only difference. Marketing. There's no other difference. So I've been thinking about that a lot. And I do think that I've got to get I do think that, and this is a practice, I think we're going to have to build this into our lives, is we have to kind of, maybe, I don't know what the word is. We have to be more sensitive. We have to resensitize. I think we need to feel. How can we not feel for these things anymore? We watch it and then we're on to the next documentary. That's crazy. That's a crazy way of living. And I guess in marketing as well, if we're not feeling things and all we're doing is regurgitating the same stuff to play into the same short-term dopamine hits, and that's all we're doing, are we really delivering longevity? And I guess that's what a lot of us strive for, is things to be remembered by. And are we doing that? And so that's something I'm thinking about for myself. I don't know if I'm doing that enough. So I've been watching that. Anyway, I watched Tiger King. It was fantastic. Like I said, it was one of the craziest documentaries I've ever seen. I'm fully morally conflicted on the matter, as you can tell. I do recommend watching it because it is fascinating, and it is, if you haven't seen it yet, it is fascinating. But I do also challenge you to think afterwards and maybe come back to me. Put me a message at maybe hello@scottcornutt.com is probably the best email. I'll probably get an advertising email, maybe a Twitter account. Even as I'm publishing this, I'm not planning on doing any of that social media stuff, really. I'm just planning on having the podcast, and hopefully if there are a few of you subscribe, even if one, I'm going to get onto this, even if one person listens, I was just about to say. I don't want one person listening. I want more than one person listening. But if it really is the case that if this sparks creativity in one person outside of myself, then I think it's all worth it. So yeah, do share your thoughts with me on Tiger King. And I read this yesterday, Carol the Bitch Baskin. And I say the bitch because I think that's what she's referred to on the show. And I really like the way it sounds. But what did she win? She won his zoo or something? She definitely took it over his old zoo. I don't know what she's doing. She definitely killed her husband, that's for sure. She killed her husband. Let's not debate that. She's no hero either. Not only did she killed her husband and she stole a man's zoo. We know those two things. So don't glorify Carol Baskin either. Okay, what else have I been watching? So in esport, well, I guess it's not even esports, it's just in gaming. So in gaming, I've become somewhat addicted to Fortnite. And I say somewhat, I can wean myself off it, but I am playing it daily here and there. And I did partake in all of the Travis Scott, I think it was called Astronomical. I'm pretty certain the kind of astronomical events. So if you're not familiar with this, number one with Fortnite and why it's popular, it's basically Battle Royale. If you don't know Battle Royale, I don't know, go watch it. Everyone's on an island. There are 100 people on an island, and you have to fight to the death. Sounds horrific. It's a lot of fun. Listen, I think I'm pretty good at it. I've got my own strategies. I'm not live streaming at the moment. Maybe I should be live streaming. I feel like I've got a pretty good win rate. I've got around, at the time of talking, I've got a 10% win rate. So I win 1 in 10 games, which I think is pretty good. Again, I'm not playing it crazy day and night like some people, but I might play it at the moment. I reckon I average a game a day, 1 or 2 games a day, maybe 1 or 3. So maybe 1 or 3 games a day. And I don't really want to give away my strategies on this podcast, not until I'm a sponsored Fortnite player. But at the beginning, I think it was around a month ago now, Travis Scott collaborated with Fortnite, and it was really a collaboration to do 2 things. There was one where a collaboration led up to a concert which took place within Fortnite, so an in-game concert. And then there were loads of kind of peripheral Travis Scott related items that you could buy and find in-game. And if you don't know Travis Scott, he's kind of an American. Some people call him hip hop or rap. We'd debate that another day, but he's popular. He's a popular musician. Let's put it that way. I'm a fan. Listen, I'm a fan of the Astroworld album. Maybe not some of his other stuff, but I'm definitely a fan of the Astroworld album. And I'm a fan of the aesthetic of all of the astronomical related content, which was in game. So you get these giant Travis Scott heads that you can run through, this big kind of theme park that you can watch on-screen events on, and then the actual main event was Travis Scott running around as this giant character performing loads of songs in the game. It was absolutely fascinating. I can't remember. Maybe I need to Google this quickly. I'm going to Google this. So Travis Scott. I think something like, let's have a little look. I can't remember how many people watched it live, but it was a lot. And I'm going to get really annoyed if I don't find out how many people this was. In accordance to stats released by Epic, in addition to the 12.3 million watching live on April the 23rd, more than 27.7 million viewed the concert across the 5 events that ran until April the 27th. These are just crazy numbers. And then if you want to watch, I'll link it in the show notes for this podcast. You can actually watch the concert that I'm talking about on YouTube because they posted it afterwards. And that YouTube video, when I last watched it, I think it was up to about 40 million viewers. So we're talking crazy in-game numbers. So if you've not been paying attention to, and this is an area which I'm exploring, paying a lot more attention and a lot more time on myself, is in-game advertising and in-game, not even advertising, in-game branding, in-game marketing, in-game collaboration. This is the future in combination with esports. So, people aren't going to each other's houses anymore and spending time sitting there on social media, spending time sitting there messaging each other. You're old. So people are going to each other's house. Well, not at the moment. If people are going to each other's houses now, let them do it. It's a pandemic, but they're young. They'll probably make it. But people are going to each other's houses and are playing video games and are playing online games or local play games and that have this in-game branding. This is where people's eyes are at. And so you need to be paying attention. I'm paying attention. And to be honest with you, I absolutely loved it. There was something really weird about running through the land of Fortnite. I don't even know what it's called, but this big island and just running through all of these kind of massive Travis Scott heads and picking up all these items related to Travis Scott and finding all this music and in-game content. It was fascinating and it was enjoyable. And I don't know a whole lot about Travis Scott, and even I enjoyed it. And I did enjoy the Astroworld album. So to tie it in with the album and all of the content from that album was amazing for me as a fan of that album as well. So all you have to do is check the numbers, go on YouTube, get familiar with what's happening in Fortnite because it's happening in so many other games. And I'm addicted. I am addicted in a small way. And if anyone out there wants to sponsor an up-and-coming Fortnite player who probably doesn't meet the typical demographic criteria, I am over 30 now, but that has a particularly good strategy that results in a 10% win rate, you know where I am. What else have I been watching? I spent 4 hours. So this is one of the beautiful things that's come out of the pandemic is people helping each other. And in the creative sector, because in the creative sector, so many musicians, so many people just in performing arts or in the arts have lost their jobs, have lost their livelihoods, have lost their income. But these are creative people and these are resilient people. And one thing that I'm fascinated by, and I've been fascinated by, is the creative industry's response to this. And there are some things that I've really been motivated by. So one of them is what I'm about to talk about now. In the US, in Hollywood, there's the Comedy Store. I think it's Hollywood. I'm pretty certain it's Hollywood. Anyway, there's the Comedy Store. So a really well-known comedy store comedy venue. And it had to close because of the pandemic. And that meant that all of the waiters, all of the bar staff, the waitresses, just anyone that's and all of their regular comics, so the non-famous comics that are regulars on that circuit or in that store, they all temporarily lost their jobs. And these are people's livelihoods. Now, the Comedy Store is really well connected, and it's been a stomping ground for a lot of famous comedians for many, many years. I think for maybe 50, 60 years now. I think maybe I got that wrong, but a lot of the famous comedians came together for something called the Comedy Store Benefit. And the Comedy Store Benefit was a 4-hour show split into 3 sections with 4 different comics, I think, on each show. So I don't know if you're into comedy, there were Dave Chappelle was on there, Donnell Rawlins, Neil Brennan, Theo Von, Bert Kreischer, Tom Segura, there's some other names, but Chris D'Elia, loads of different famous comedians who for 4 hours just kind of, shot the shit. Is that the phrase? Shot the shit? Chatted breeze. They were just chatting like this with each other, but obviously they're funny people. And they were doing that, and they spent their own time, and you can watch this video on YouTube still, I think, to raise money for the Comedy Store staff. So, a little technical problem there. So, yeah, they were raising money for the Comedy Store staff, and it was really fun, and it was just a nice way to see people come together and spend their time to support each other. I know there are so many good funds, musician funds. I've really enjoyed one of the other things that I'm watching is the IG sessions and the versus battle. So if you're into hip hop, then Timbaland and my mind's gone blank. Timbaland and Swiss Beats came together and created versus battles, and so we've had versus battles between, I don't know, Nelly, Ludacris, and Teddy Riley and Babyface, Jill Scott, Erykah Badu, 112, Jagged Edge, I think was one. And they've created a format to give us a new viewing experience and supported, I guess that's not even monetary, that's just supporting the fans and creating something interesting during lockdown. So I've been really, in terms of creative responses in the arts to the pandemic, and in the pandemic, the Comedy Store Benefit, go check that out. Again, I'll link that in the show notes. The IG sessions and the versus battles, I've forgotten, but the versus battles have broken records when it comes to, and this is another reason that hip hop moves everything. It creates everything. It's at the center of everything. It is the creative pioneer. It is. And it's at the forefront of every movement, every creative movement. And again, we've seen that in the pandemic where people in hip hop came together and they created these versus battles. And then they've spiraled out from just into hip hop into areas of R&B and soul and other areas of music. And that's been really enjoyable to watch. And it's time out. It's a distraction. It's a different creative experience. And there's a lot of nostalgia in there too, which is really fun. So yeah, I've been watching that Comedy Store Benefit, been playing a bit of Fortnite and watching that Fortnite stuff unfold. Man, Ozark, if you've not seen Ozark, I won't touch too much on TV shows. I don't watch a whole lot of TV, maybe one show on the regular, but Ozark is an amazingly written TV show. I thought it was about like aliens in the woods. It's nothing to do with that. It's about money laundering. It's about if you've ever watched, if you've seen Uncut Gems yet on Netflix, and that kind of suspense, it's like that suspense, but over 4 seasons so far, and I'm still into it. Brilliant acting. Go watch Ozark. One thing I noticed about actually, and I've just got this noted next to me, is one thing, if you're in advertising and marketing, I'd love to know people's thoughts on this and whether they're spotting it too. But in Netflix, in the top left-hand corner, when you open some shows, there's a little notification from Netflix that says there's a product placement in this TV show. So it's specific, and I don't know whether those are, I need to research this, but I don't know whether those are paid for. So I don't know now if we're seeing product placement specifically within TV shows and whether that's even allowed, and whether that's negotiated as part of the TV show deal, or whether it's negotiated on an episode by episode basis. but there's definitely a notification that appears in some TV shows in the top left-hand corner on Netflix, and that specifies that there's a product placement. And I've been looking out for them, within the actual show, and I can't see them. So they're doing it really, really well. I'm fascinated to know more about that. What else have I been doing? Well, I did watch. This isn't through interest. This was more curiosity is interest, I guess. So Tekashi 6ix9ine came out of prison. He went on IG Live for the first time, and I'm pretty certain that as the time I record this, he still has the IG Live record. Again, you can argue whether he's hip hop or not in the purest cultural sense of the form, but he's certainly associated with hip hop in some respects. And again, hip hop being at the forefront of viewing figures. He jumped on IG Live after being in prison, and he broke the IG Live record with 2 million people watching him live on IG. This was a few weeks back, where he was talking about being a snitch and stuff. So it's really, I'm just sharing that because the attention is still on Instagram. The attention is on Instagram Live. There are creative uses for Instagram, like I said, with the versus battles, with DJ sets, with tributes, with money raising, with crowdfunding. So pay attention to what's happening on Instagram Live still, because the viewing figures are still there, even if you don't like Tekashi 6ix9ine, which I don't really. And then what else have I been watching? What else have I been watching that's interesting? I've been using this app called, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm probably going to murder this. Speaking about murder. No, I'll talk about that. So I've been using an app called Quibi. It's Quibi, pretty sure. And what it is it's like Netflix, but only on your mobile and in portrait format. So that sounds maybe not. And in short clips. So I don't really know how they're promoting themselves. I can't even remember how I stumbled across it, but I did. And I'm fascinated in what's happening in the video production space. And so I downloaded this app, Quibi. And it's kind of like really well produced content, almost like Netflix kind of style, but in shorter, like 5-minute episodes. So again, there are, just in terms of name dropping people that are on there, Chrissy Teigen has a show on there called Chrissy Teigen's Court. One of the things I've subscribed to on there is the Dodo. So it's the Dodo Daily, which is videos about animals and fun stuff on a daily basis. It's quite heartwarming. LeBron James has a show about, I think it's rebuilding Akron, maybe. I think that's what that show is. But the one that which I just jumped into straight away, which I'm almost embarrassed to admit, but maybe this will get them a few more subscribers, is called Murder House Flip. Let me repeat that. Murder. So no wonder I'm desensitized. Murder House Flip. So they take a house where there's been a murder, someone's done a bad crime, and they kind of coat over the blood, remove the nails, that kind of stuff. And then I think, I haven't seen this bit yet. I guess they sell the house. That's the flip part. Yeah, so they must then sell it. But the episode that I saw, they just made the house better for the people that were living in it. They kind of made it less haunted. So that was quite a beautiful thing to see for the couple. I'm serious as well. So in the first episode that I watched, they were like, this is where the torso used to be, but they only found the torso. They never found their hands, arms, legs, whatever other limbs we have. And what we're going to do for the grandchildren is we're going to build a swing over this so they forget about it. And they built a swing over the area where the dead body was found, over the torso. And that's Murder House Flip. So I've been watching that. What else? What have I been listening to? So I talked about Will Smith. I've been listening to a lot of lo-fi hip-hop. I'm probably not going to talk. I'll probably do a separate podcast about hip-hop entirely. I've been listening to Mike Tyson's podcast, Hot Boxing. I've been listening to a podcast called Mafia, which my friend got me into. Shout out to Simon Burslam. Mafia is a series-based podcast about American crime activity and I guess really well-known gangsters. And I'm on the episode right now where they're telling the story of Donnie Brasco, and Donnie Brasco himself it's kind of almost like an audio book where he's talking through how he infiltrated the gangs and stuff like that. That's amazing. And so I'm mainly listening to that podcast at the moment. I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, but the primary podcast that I'm listening to is that. There was another one though that I started listening to. Let me get on my podcast quickly and just have a little look at what I'm listening to, what I've been subscribing to, make some recommendations. So yeah, Mafia's one. Joe Rogan. So, I mean, I'm a Joe Rogan fan anyway. I know he can be quite a controversial character, but yeah, jumping into, I mean, I've been listening to his podcast, his episode with, he's had an episode with Elon Musk, which was amazing. Whether you like them or not, it's just fascinating the topics that they get into. Who else has been on Joe Rogan that I've enjoyed recently? Let's have a little look through this. This is the episode that you should check out. There's two actually. So Tony Hawk on Joe Rogan was amazing. And if you've never read any of Tony Hawk's books, just how we're talking about someone else that primarily their function was their lifestyle was skateboarding, but he made the most of his money from video games. And the way Tony Hawk has constantly reinvented himself is amazing. And he's just got a great story, and he's got some great lessons in motivation. So Tony Hawk is a great listen. But yeah, when it comes to motivation, the one Joe Rogan episode that I listened to recently, which I think is a must watch for anyone, even if you're not a particularly big fan of Joe Rogan, is Kevin Hart. I think Kevin Hart's been on the Joe Rogan experience twice, and both of his episodes are must watch. I cannot watch those episodes without feeling like a failure, and that's in the sweetest way. So I watch those episodes and I think, what the fuck am I doing? Just sitting here doing nothing today, listening to this podcast. It's so motivating, and it makes me it really makes me come away and think about all of my wasted time. And sometimes it's good to challenge yourself in that way. So yeah, that's a podcast that I'm listening to. Got some MMA podcasts in here, so I won't go through those. There's two podcasts marketing related actually, which are worth knowing about because these have kind of gone under the radar. But Google have a Think with Google podcast, so that can be quite interesting. And I've been listening to that. What else is in here? I think those are the main ones at the moment. I've got loads of others which I'll probably share some other time, but mostly in the areas of kind of comedy and some other stuff. But yeah, Mafia, I've been listening to that. What have I been doing? So what I've actually, outside of listening and watching, what have I actually been doing? So I think one of the hardest things in the pandemic has been to try and find, and this is for everyone, is trying to find a new routine. So you kind of wake up and then maybe you, I don't know, go back to sleep. Maybe you do a little slack from your bed. You know, maybe you're late to a meeting, and so you don't put your camera on and you just attend a team meeting, and then you work through your lunch break at your desk, and the end of the day comes and you're still working, and then it's the next day and you're waking up and you're on Slack again, and blah, blah, blah. And it's been like that on occasion for me. So I've had to get back into, I'm someone that I need exercise, and I need my creative breaks. I need to have detachment from things to stay, I guess, mentally healthy and also creative. So I've been breaking up the day, getting into a new routine, trying to be more self-disciplined, another thing. And I'm not really super fit or anything crazy like that. But one promise I make to myself is I have to sweat every day. I have to sweat. I have to get it out of my system. And if I don't sweat, then I've not earned the day. So I really tried to do a little something every day to make myself sweat, to get that out of my system. And I haven't been able to do that as much at home. So I bought myself two gadgets, which I have been, one that I'm using and one that's about to arrive this week. The first gadget, which I recommend for anyone that's the same position and feels the same way as I do, you need to get that sweat on, and you're not quite getting there through things like yoga, or maybe not getting there through weightlifting or whatever it is that you do. It's just not quite giving you that cardio, that deep sweat, is the desk cycle. So Google it. You can find it on eBay, Amazon, maybe via their website as well. It's basically like, it doesn't take up too much space. It's an under desk exercise bike, and my legs have been feeling like cheese strings. I don't know what they're feeling like. I can't even walk on them. I'm not even too sure if they're mine anymore. They don't even feel like mine, put it that way. I'll go out and I'm like, whose legs are these? And so it's given me back my legs. It's made me feel like my legs are mine again. It's like an exercise bike. Apparently, it's meant to be like beginner to intermediate level, but it's got 8 settings, and I've only managed to get it up to 5, and I struggle on the 5th setting. So it really gives me a good workout. And the best thing is, I can work out during the day as I'm working. It fits right under my desk. So I'm doing a couple of things. I'm doing the desk cycle during really boring meetings where I'm just listening and not having to contribute much. I'm getting my workout in. And I'm also just sometimes at my lunch breaks, just closing my laptop, or just at least closing my work laptop. Maybe I'll just fire up a podcast, a YouTube video, maybe something on Netflix, and I'll just sit for an hour on the desk cycle, get an hour's worth of cardio in. So that's really helped me to break up the day. And so that's my gadget recommendation for something that I've been doing. And honestly, my legs, I feel like I've got leg muscles again. That's good to see. I just want these thick quads. That's what I want. I want thick quads by the end of this. If that's all I get, I don't know. That's all I pray for. And the other thing that I've purchased, which is coming this week, which I'm really excited about, is the Xiaomi walking pad. So this is it's like a compact treadmill that folds in the middle so that you can store it away easily. I'm fascinated by this gadget. I've imported it from geekbuying.com to the UK. I've been waiting for it for like 30 days or something crazy like that, and it's coming this week. So I'm someone that loves the treadmill, so I'm really looking forward to getting into that and sweating it out even more. So I've been doing some exercise. I've been getting back into that. I've done hundreds of miles on this desk cycle thing, and I can tell you that's been a real game changer for me and got me back some of my sweat equity, which is great. And the other thing I've been getting back into is just art. And that's something, just reconnecting, like I talked about reconnecting to passions, is that I write, sometimes I talk, I'm in marketing, so I'm somewhat creative on a daily basis. But art is something that I enjoyed as a kid, and it's something that I've been able to reconnect to during this pandemic. I'm not quite comfortable to share art yet. But I've been getting more crafty. So, there's something about just having that. I'm looking to my left-hand side of my desk, and I have scissors and my ruler and my craft paper and my pens and my kind of crafting knife and all these things. And I'm working on something that I'm finding a really interesting project. Maybe I'll be comfortable to share that later at a later date, maybe when this pandemic's over, to show you what I've been doing. But right now, this is just for me. And I actually think that's quite important too. As much as I'm on this podcast to share and to talk about the things that I enjoy, I tell this to a lot of people. Some projects you've got to keep to yourself. I think you have to keep those creative secrets because they keep you motivated. Always keep a little for yourself. So this little art project that I'm working on, I'm keeping for myself. But I've been doing that, and I've been reading a lot about the science of the connection. I can't remember where I got this from, but there's a science between, and when you just think about this quickly, if you're listening, there's a connection. If you take your thumb and your index finger, so in as if you were writing, so do that. So you got your head down, you got your arm down, pretend you're writing at the moment. Your thumb and index finger are together, and then just, I guess, rotate your thumb and index finger. Do that with both hands, so as if you're writing with your left and right hand, and then rotate your thumb and index finger so they look back at you. And what you'll find is you're in the pose of meditation. And I was reading this study about the connection between your thumb and index finger and how closely it's related to both meditation and also helping your synapses connect so creating new synapse connections, I think is the phrasing or the science behind it. So and if you're not doing that, you're not creating new synapses or not creating new connections, is probably the way to phrase it. I think there's something to that. There is a shot of something that goes through your body, a shot of satisfaction, a feeling of satisfaction that you get after you've done something, whether it's writing or something. I was going to say something with your hands, but I'm not talking about masturbation. It's just something creative with your hands, not the dirty stuff. So something arty. Yeah, please don't do masturbation and then tell me that that's art. That's all. Okay, so they're the things that I've been doing. Things that I'm reading. I'm always reading a lot. I've gone away from blogs a lot these days. I'm reading books. The one book that I'm in the middle of reading right now, I haven't quite finished it, is Lost and Founder by Rand Fishkin. There's two reasons I'm reading that book. One, because it's an interesting book and it's been recommended to me, but I also interviewed Rand Fishkin on this internet marketing podcast for Site Visibility, which you can go check out on their podcast. And so I was reading the book in preparation for interviewing him. It just so happened that it came around that I didn't quite finish the book by the time I'd interviewed him. And then in the end, we didn't end up talking about the book at all. We talked about his new tools, his new software, Spark Toro. But one thing I have found, I am going to recommend the book. I'm close to finishing it. Is I didn't expect it to be that interesting, to be honest with you. I knew he was an interesting guy. I knew he had contributed a lot to marketing, but I had no idea he would be very warts and all with this book. And so, he's really very open in the book about his experience, his early experience in building Moz, how some of the decisions that he's had to make in Moz, some of his experiences. And I guess it was it was more open and not more honest. I guess more heart on sleeve than I expected. And I really enjoy it when I feel like it's genuine. I feel it's authentic, and I'm reading that, and I'm reading about the experiences. I guess that's one thing I want to achieve with this podcast. It has to feel authentic, and his book feels authentic. And so shout out to Rand Fishkin. Go listen to that other episode. Maybe I'll get to interview him here or on the other podcast someday about the book in more detail. So I've mainly been reading that. I don't think I'm really reading too much. What else am I reading at the moment? Let's have a quick look. Where's my Kindle? What other reading recommendations have I got? Well, I've just started reading one which is Habits for Better Vision, and I don't know how to pronounce the author's name. I've only just started reading it, so I need to research it a bit more. I think it's Eileen Yi Fan, and so I've started wearing glasses more recently, and I've got a really light prescription, but really I want to challenge my eyes a bit more. I don't think my eyes are just there. They see stuff, but I don't really think they work. Well, they definitely, I'm wearing glasses, so they haven't been working hard enough. And so I want to make them work harder. And apparently this book teaches you ways to make your vision better, and I think helps you to stop wearing glasses. So I've only just started reading it. I'm going to get way into that. Maybe, I don't know, if you see me without glasses, maybe that means it's working. So Habits for Better Vision, that's by Eileen Yi Fan. Paying attention to that at the moment. What else did I read? I read a book that I think was really motivating to me, but it was really stupid, called This is the Worst Book in the World. And it was just a kid's book about being the worst book in the world. And the point it was trying to make is that anyone can write a book, which I felt like that was motivating and then also disheartening at the same time. I read that. And then I've just purchased, and I'm going to go on to this maybe in closing, Why I'm No Longer Talking About Race. And, that book is being recommended to people at the moment, particularly for white people, to become more educated around Black matters, the Black community, and really it's just time to educate ourselves. And I think I'll talk more about that in closing in a minute because it's on my mind. But I purchased that book as well, and I think the author. What's the author's name? Let me remind myself. Rennie Otto Lodge. So why I'm no longer talking to white people about race. I've been recommended that. I've seen that on my timeline, and so I'll be reading that. And I think the author is still requesting that people match the purchase price of the book. And I'll have to find out the details and maybe put this in the show notes. But I remember seeing that the author's encouraging people to donate the same amount as the book purchase, which I think is around £4 on Amazon. So shout out to her. I'm looking forward to getting into that. what else is going on? What else is going on in marketing? I noticed TikTok's been taken off, but then a lot of people were talking about silencing the Black Lives Matter movement on TikTok. So a lot of people are coming away from that platform, which again, kind of fully support. If they're not supportive of their creators, their Black creators, and they're not rewarding them, come off that platform. There's no need to be on it. I did notice that TikTok has launched its self-surfing ad platform in the UK now. I think it's been available in the US for a while. So I might end up experimenting with those perhaps. I guess the TikTok challenges have been a highlight, probably just from an entertainment perspective in the lockdown over these last few months. The ones that have taken my attention most and captured my attention most are the Wipe Down Challenge, which has been really fun. I think it's maybe Wipe Down. I'm pretty certain it's Wipe Down Challenge, maybe Wipe Up, maybe Glow Up. I can't remember what it is. But it's kind of the wiping on the mirror and then transforming. Lots of beautiful people doing that, which is very depressing for me. But also lots of creative uses. Particularly, I love the ones where they mix the camera footage with animation. Those are brilliant. So I've really enjoyed that. I think Chloe and Hailey, just from a music industry perspective, killed it with their, came out with a new look, a new song, and absolutely killed it with the promotion through and this is another important thing in the music industry. It just it goes to show how choreography is still such, okay, let me break this down as a thought for a moment. For a long time in rap, in hip hop, we were talking about quotables in music being, and even in just pop music, not outside of hip hop, quotables being the things that songs needed to make it popular on social media. So you take a quotable, a lyric, whatever it is, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but you take a quotable and then, you build a quotable into your song in the knowledge that that thing will be repeated on social media because it's a thing that resonates with everyone. So even if it's not the best line, it's a quotable line and that will make the song popular. Okay, we know that. That's happened over the last 10, 15 years, maybe longer. But now there's a new thing, and with TikTok and with the visual aspect of it, there's the choreography, and this has been around. Well, this has been around forever. People copying dance moves and so forth, but particularly in these short snippet videos from the Vine days and now into TikTok, choreography is such an important part of promotion, and it really gets swept under the radar. But the choreography of Chloe and Hailey's video in the Do It challenge that's been popular on TikTok is the key to that success. It's a simple thing that a lot of people can do, but it's still a little bit challenging, particularly if you're not a dancer. So I really found that fascinating and thought, I just think the secret there is great choreography can be key to great promotion, particularly in the music industry still. So that's what stood out to me about TikTok. What else is going on in marketing? I noticed that LinkedIn have launched their newsletter subscriptions. I think that's interesting to me, just being someone that's interested in writing. I think that's only open to people that are verified. Maybe it's invite only on that platform at the moment. But LinkedIn have been actually doing quite a good thing over these last couple of years by venturing out into new formats. I think they're doing really well with video, and I believe they're testing live video, live streaming. I don't think that's available to everyone at the moment. And now they're testing these newsletter subscriptions as well. Again, a great way to make money, and another way that people will be building money and revenue streams away from their primary platforms. There's no need to have a website anymore to generate money. You can generate money on an individual platform, and each individual platform sensibly is creating a way for their creators to generate money on their platforms. And I do believe that live streaming and newsletter subscriptions on LinkedIn will be that new revenue stream for LinkedIn. So I'm paying a lot of attention to that at the moment too. And the only other thing in marketing and advertising, which outside of everything that I've talked about in today's episode, that I've been really blown away by, was the Rogan to Spotify podcast deal. So Joe Rogan joined Spotify. He's been on YouTube and hosted his video podcast on YouTube. Over 1,000, I'm going to say 200 to 500-ish episodes. I don't know how long now, maybe 10, 15 years. I've been watching them for the last maybe 6 or 7, maybe a bit longer. And he's had sponsors on the podcast before, but it's not it's not heavy sponsorship. He's delivered so much amazing content for free. A lot of people, he's controversial because he does give right-wing figures a platform. And some people argue whether that's a good or a bad thing. But at very least, it's interesting. From my perspective, I find it interesting. And there's no doubt, the one thing I don't think anyone can doubt is that he's put hard work into that podcast to make it interesting and to build his own network, his own platform, his own value for a long time. He's got over, I think it's around 8.5 to 10 million subscribers on YouTube. He is a powerful network in his own right and a powerful medium. And so he's essentially earned his massive payday. I've seen comments out there that says that he's actually feeling disgusted by the amount that Spotify paid him. Is probably more than 100 million. So the deal is that he'll be coming off of YouTube later in the year, and then his podcast in exactly the same format it's currently in will be exclusively available on Spotify. And I think that's to everyone on Spotify, so free and premium users. But it's a platform-specific deal. And I just think that's going to open the floodgates. We know that, and this is what I was speaking to James Mulvaney about, I think, on our podcast that comes out in a couple of weeks' time, is that Apple Podcasts really dropped the ball when it comes to podcasting. They were the lead platform for 15 years or so. And now Spotify and Google Podcasts and all these other podcast apps have come along and have taken essentially not only market share, and this is a great thing for creators, is that most creators up until this point have not been tied to a specific platform. So you can release a podcast, and this is a really interesting thing about podcasting. And your podcast can go to all of those platforms, and you are there are no gatekeepers, which is great. Now, Rogan has chosen essentially a gatekeeper in Spotify. He's a smart man. I'm sure that his decision to go to Spotify means that he gets full creative control still. He seems like a person that kind of wouldn't accept anything less. But what it does open up is it will open up everyone's awareness that, perhaps YouTube, perhaps Stitcher, perhaps all of these other platforms will have to pay their best podcasts for exclusive publishing more. And so that might open up a lot more publishing, a lot more exclusivity deals in podcasting moving forward. I know that's happening in the industry at the moment, but I think it's just going to raise awareness, and we're going to see we're going to see even more of that happening as a result of this deal. So that's something I've been fascinated by, and I just think it's a great move from Spotify. 100 million sounds like a lot or even more, but when it's the biggest podcast in the world, you have to pay those numbers, and it's going to bring a lot of viewers. It's going to bring a lot of awareness to their podcasts on that platform. So I think that's a great deal. And I think Tidal, I haven't mentioned this, and I might talk about this in a future episode. I think Tidal have done a really good thing with podcasting over the last couple of years as well. But yeah, the great thing for creators is there's so much diversity in podcasting and where you can place your podcast, and the kind of deals, if you want sponsorships, the kind of deals that you can negotiate at this point, particularly if you've been podcasting for quite a long time. So I really think that's a good deal for podcasting in general, and probably gives a lot of podcasters out there a lot of hope that there is money to be made down the line. And it's good that we're not tied to one platform still. There is still, it creates more competition, which I think is a good thing as well for creators. And the only other thing from a marketing perspective, actually, just before I think I'll wrap up today, who knows, what time are we at? We're at 1 hour and 20. So I've gone over the advertising hour. Sometimes I might go over slightly. I've been thinking a lot about marketing and data. So I think right now what I'm seeing is with businesses having to shut as a result of the pandemic, people are crippled really by the lack of connection to their audience and the lack of attention they've paid to data. Those are two things that really stand out to me. So, imagine a life, there's no pandemic, and then suddenly there's a pandemic. Well, now you've got all your staff furloughed, and you're there. You've got to make decisions about your business, and you haven't invested in data previously. You haven't invested in a web analyst. You haven't invested in a marketing analyst. You haven't invested in a data engineer, a data scientist. Where do your decisions then come from about your business moving forward? How do you forecast? How do you logically predict and create scenarios around your company and what the future looks like? How can you do that? You can't do that. If you've not been investing in those skills, you are now crippled. And so that's really been standing out to me. A lot of companies that have been making wrong decisions for a very long time, where, people like myself, but loads of people more prominently than me have been saying, you need to invest in data. You need to invest in analysts. This is a growing area, and it's such a critical component to a marketing team or the marketing function of your company. And if you've not been investing in it, now you're crippled because you're making decisions from thin air. It's sad to see. It's been really sad for me to see. I look at data, and this is how I look at marketing analysts. I look at data and just marketing analysts. Imagine you've got a treasure chest of money, and it's in your office right now, but it's behind a locked door, a reinforced locked door, and somebody's lost the key. That's data. If someone's lost, you had that key, you had that option, and you lost it. And somewhere in your company, you're sitting on that data, you're sitting on that money. And if you're not investing in analytics, and then you're not investing in data analysis, and that's not a part of your marketing plans, and you're making decisions. Listen, if data doesn't limit your vision, that's a lot of for the egotistical people out there. They think that data limits their vision or limits their ambition, and it doesn't. You still have your vision, but data informs your strategy. And that's such an important lesson. I think that's so many people let their ego overshadow data because they're worried about testing their own assumptions. They're worried about data proving them wrong. And there's no other way of looking at through my eyes, but if you do that, you're limiting your ability to achieve your vision. There's no other way to look at it. So I've been thinking a lot about data, and I'm seeing a lot of businesses that are struggling through their lack of investment in data. So that's been on my mind from a marketing perspective. And I think now's the time. When a lot of people out there now are planning for H2 2020, maybe into 2021, they're thinking, what will this look like? What hires do I need? What critical skills do I need in my team? Listen, if you can't hire someone in a dedicated position for data and analytics, you've got to educate yourself. Those are the only two options. And like I said, in harmony, your vision, your ambition, and data can work together. And that's probably the best marketers out there are probably those that use data to inform their decision making, but that they don't let data dictate their vision. I think that's another important thing. So that's been on my mind too. And then I'm going to just close out. I think you've got a sense of what this podcast's like. But one thing I've realised, and one other reason that I launched the podcast is, and this has come about this week as a result of the circumstances surrounding George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and the re-emergence, I guess, of that movement just in mainstream culture more than anything, is that I always thought of myself as an ally to Black people. I always, I'm interested in hip hop. I study. I've thought that I'm sensitive, and I spend a lot of my own time researching and being, I guess, culturally sensitive and supportive. But I hadn't been vocal, and there's a big difference. And one thing that I've realised, and has been very humbling for me, is that, and this came through a conversation with Sophie, my girlfriend, is that yes, I can be supportive, and yes, I can educate myself. But what I didn't realise, or what I hadn't paid attention to, or perhaps had been ignorant to, is that just being a white person, I actually already have a platform. I already have a voice. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the best written prose. It doesn't have to be the most articulate. It doesn't have to be the most articulate, the best articulate. I don't know what the phrase is. I'm already getting that wrong. It doesn't have to be articulated to perfection. I have a platform, and I should share my thoughts on the topic. And so I haven't done enough. I haven't been supportive. And so it's been a kick up my arse and an eye awakening and time for me to really put some of my thoughts and my research and my platform into action. So that's another thing that made me realize that, I needed to press record I needed to start getting live with my thoughts, because even if I'm not the most articulate, I have a platform and I need to use it. So that's another reason I'm here. And another reason I decided to press record today. So I guess I'm thankful for that, embarrassed by that. But I guess and I've said this to a few people, white people, friends, and so forth, is that my embarrassment is nothing in comparison to the continued suffering of the Black community and what they've kind of had to suffer for so long. So if I have to be slightly embarrassed by my own admissions on a podcast or in conversations with people, slightly humbled, just that's nothing. It's nothing to think about. So that was maybe the extra motivation that I didn't know that I should have had in myself already. So that's that. This is the advertising hour. Be good to yourself. Put a little honey in your tea this morning. And until next time. The next time is going to be with James Mulvaney of podcast.co. It's a really interesting episode, so I hope you tune in. But until then, I'm going to play some outro music and just take a moment for myself before I move on with the rest of my day. So this is Asaku with Wind.